Incredible heroic team discovers hidden bond as they rescue baby zebra from 1,000-pound crocodile. Grace paced anxiously around the worn-out wooden floor of her wildlife rescue operation, the muggy heat clinging to her skin like a stubborn shadow. She wiped her brow and glanced at the clock, the minute hand creeping forward, mocking her sense of urgency. Noah was home with a neighbor, but he was always present in her mind, a constant reminder of what was at stake. She was a single mother struggling to keep afloat, balancing her fledgling rescue against the chaos of her life since her husband walked away. Was it a curse, or could it be a chance for renewal? The phone's shrill ring shattered her thoughts. It was the local wildlife refuge, and she knew the voice on the other end, Walter. His news rattled her. A baby zebra was trapped near the swamp, a crocodile lurking nearby, watching, waiting. The urgency ignited something within her, yet a cold shudder of dread seeped through. Could they really risk their lives for this lost creature? Beneath the surface, her internal struggle writhed. What would it mean to fail? Would Noah ever forgive her if she let them down again? Gathering her team felt instinctual, despite the worn-out edges of their own lives. Jake was always biting his nails, nerves tangled with the weight of overdue bills. Lucy was vibrant, but often fled from her dreams whenever doubt encroached. Roger, the tired, retired ranger, was a walking encyclopedia of survival, but carried the shadows of choices made long ago. Each of them bore scars, and their stories intertwined like roots hidden under the surface. Could they truly unite for a mission, especially when their own fears loomed larger than the crocodile? Noah peeked in occasionally, his little face lighting up when he saw his mother's fervor, and it twisted at Grace's heart. He needed security, and she felt like a child when he looked to her for confidence. The moment deepened the gulf between her goals and her reality, paralyzing her. Her mind raced. She could lead them into danger. What if they were too late? Dread clawed at her, making her want to hide in the depths of her fears. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The team settled into planning, tension building with words unvoiced, and the unsaid loomed over them. What if they failed the zebra? Jake questioned the ethics of risking their lives. Lucy's voice trembled as she weighed her dreams against her doubt. Grace felt the pressure rising off her shoulders, and she had to force her breath down, attempting to ground herself. Fear clawed at her insides. What if they let that baby zebra die? Panic washed over her in waves, gripping the back of her throat. The emotions within spiraled. She could lead them to either triumph or failure. In that moment, she stood on a precipice, the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest. Would this mission be another defeat, or would it weave something between them, a bond that could carry their scars into the light? The hall echoed with silence, punctuated only by the soft rustle of papers. Outside, the unyielding heat intensified. With the flicker of doubt hanging in the air, the looming arrival of another rescue team shifted the atmosphere altogether. Would that support fuse them together or threaten their fragile foundation? Grace teetered on the edge, heart racing as her instinct screamed to move, to decide before the moment vanished and that baby zebra's life hung in the balance. In that perfect storm of uncertainty, she cast one last glance at Noah, the decision waiting to take form. Knowing the truth wasn't just about saving the zebra, but confronting the wild within them all. Grace inhaled sharply, her throat dry and tight. The noise of the incoming rescue team felt like a ticking clock, amplifying the urgency of their situation. She stepped out of her thoughts and into the chaos. Adrenaline surged through her. It was time to act. She turned to her motley crew, her voice steady despite the simmering anxiety. We need to organize. We can't let our fears dictate this mission. Jake shuffled his feet, his eyes darting between the door and the ground. But what if we're not enough? What if the other team gets there first? Then we learn from it, Grace asserted, her voice rising above his doubts. Lucy nodded, her bright presence offering a flicker of reassurance. But we have to stick to our plan. We can't allow second-guessing to sabotage us before we even start. Roger, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Every decision carries risk, but inaction is a risk too. If we hesitate, the zebra may not survive. Their eyes met, a spark igniting in the tension-filled air. Grace felt a shift, a collective understanding beginning to form. This mission wasn't merely about the zebra. It was a crucible where they would confront their fears and find resilience amid turmoil. As they moved outside, the sun beat down relentlessly, mirroring the weight of their mission. Each member of the team settled into their roles, their movements starting to represent more than function. They became a unit, aligning their intentions with unspoken aspirations. They reached the edge of the swamp, where the murky water glistened ominously. Anxiety buzzed in her veins, but she silenced the noise, focusing instead on the task at hand. She pointed to the area where the zebra had last been seen. We can split into pairs. Lucy, you and Roger go north. Jake and I will check the southern edge. Stay in contact, and if you see the zebra or the crocodile, call for backup. No one engages without a plan. Every step taken felt like a staircase leading them away from their fears. They mirrored the natural dynamic of wild animals, acting with instinct but tweaking their actions based on mutual support. Grace took solace in her growing authority, a leader forged not in perfection but through vulnerability and shared purpose. As they separated, Grace joined Jake, who resided in his own churning thoughts. "It's okay to feel scared," she said gently, gauging his expression. "But don't let doubt win. We have strengths we can harness." "Do you really think we can pull this off?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Grace paused, contemplating the many obstacles they faced. "I believe we have to. This isn't just about saving a zebra. It's about us reclaiming parts of ourselves we thought we lost. If we embrace that, we can do anything." Fueled by her conviction, they moved closer to the murky water. The shadows seemed to ripple and twist in the heat, testing Grace's resolve. Did she genuinely believe in her own capability to lead this mission to success? In that moment, her self-doubt crept back momentarily, clashing with the resolve swirling within. Then she spotted it, a flicker of gray against the green, a hint of the baby zebra nestled amid the tall grasses. Just as she felt hope stir within her chest, a chilling ripple moved through the water. The crocodile's enormous head broke the surface, eyes locked on them with predatory intent. Heart pounding, Grace felt the tension snap back. They were dangerously close to the core of conflict, just as the weight of her decision pressed once more against her conscience. The journey had only just begun, and with that ever-looming threat in the water, a new realization dawned upon her. Whatever lay ahead was not just an external battle for survival, but the wildest confrontation within herself yet to come. As the massive head of the crocodile rose from the water, Grace's instincts kicked in, fueled by the urgency of the moment. Her heart raced, a frantic drum echoing within the confines of her chest, momentarily overpowering her thoughts. This was no longer just a mission, it was survival, both for the zebra and her team. "Jake," she said sharply, her eyes locked on the creature, "we need to act calmly. The zebra's our priority, but we can't afford to ignore that threat." Jake nodded, narrower focus forming in his eyes, lingering on the swell of the water that hinted at the crocodile's stealth. Grace recalled the lessons she had learned from previous encounters in the wild. Patience and strategy were just as important as quick reflexes. She gestured for Jake to crouch low with her, moving silently toward a thick bush that offered partial cover. Each step was calculated, an unspoken resolution coursing through her. They were wild, they were fierce. "You need to focus on keeping our line of communication clear," she whispered to Jake. "When we get eyes on the zebra, let Lucy and Roger know. I want us prepared for anything." As they crept closer, Grace's mind churned. What if she miscalculated? What if their actions created more chaos than clarity? Doubt wrestled with her determination, and she felt a flicker of fear, but she quickly pushed it aside. Inaction was the enemy now. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound. The zebra was just ahead. Heart racing, Grace focused on the low hum of her own breathing, trying to center herself. She couldn't let her insecurities dilate the urgency of the situation. The zebra was vulnerable, and they had only one chance. Then a loud splash broke the tension. The crocodile was diving back under the surface, likely maneuvering into position. Grace's pulse quickened. Despite the looming threat, the sight of the zebra, malnourished yet instinctively protective of its surroundings, grounded her. Instinctively, she emitted a low call to Lucy and Roger, knowing they would be attuned to their surrounding sounds. The moment echoed with a stillness that felt almost magical, but Grace understood it was also treacherous. She needed to remain abstract, to plan a strategy that wouldn't endanger anyone. She weighed her options, luring the crocodile away or initiating a direct intervention. "Jake, if we approach quietly," she started, but doubt crept back. Were they equipped to handle an enraged crocodile? "Grace," Jake interrupted softly. "I trust you. You've got this. Let's do it together." His words ignited something within her. Acceptance. Toward her own leadership, she realized, wasn't just about guiding. It was also about being willing to lean on others. Synchronization. They moved in tandem toward the zebra cautiously, each play carefully designed. With only a few feet left, they locked eyes with the creature. Grace reached out instinctively, and for a moment the world fell silent. Then sudden chaos erupted, the crocodile re-emerging with a vengeance. Grace's mind splintered into frantic strategies. They needed to redirect its focus. She glanced at Jake, and their shared understanding spoke volumes. "On three, we move left," Grace commanded, feeling her heart pounding in compliance with the plan they had yet to formulate outside their minds. "On three," Jake echoed. Although apprehensive, the thunderous roar of the crocodile combined with her burgeoning confidence set her body into motion. Eyes trained on the zebra, but wired with every muscle ready for confrontation. As their feet carried them in sync, she realized she was not just fighting for a zebra. She was fighting for her own sense of capability and conviction. This was a defining moment, and she was ready to seize it. Knowing change lurked behind every choice they made, Grace felt the swell of determination rise through her, emboldening her actions. Just then, she heard a piercing cry. Lucy and Roger were ambushed at the north border by unseen dangers. The air turned electric, and in that charged silence, a thought reverberated. She had to confront this chaos head-on. The stakes of their mission spiraled higher as the battle seemed to unfold into unexpected layers, both outside and within her. The time had come to face the cocoon of her fears, but would it be enough? As the crocodile lunged forward, she realized her next choice would echo beyond this moment, shaping who she truly was. The chaos crashed into Grace like a tidal wave, the crocodile surging forward, jaws parting, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Instinctively, she ducked, and with a guttural roar echoing her own fears, she felt the ground tremble beneath her. "Now!" she shouted as she and Jake darted left, barely managing to evade the snapping jaws overhead. Time distorted. Each moment stretched into eternity as adrenaline spiked through her veins, igniting her senses. Seizing the opportunity, Grace pivoted. "Lucy, Roger, move to the east." She yelled into the comms with a steadiness that surprised even her. The snap of the crocodile's jaw and the chaos of unspoken fear surged around her, but her voice sliced through desperation, tethering her fragmented thoughts back to their mission. Each breath steadied her resolve. She felt vibrant, alive. This was the moment that would redefine her as a leader, not merely in the sense of commanding her team, but as someone who could inspire trust and collaboration, even amid impending danger. Jake's swift motion caught her eye, a calculated diversion aimed at the crocodile. He launched a nearby stone into the water beyond the creature, creating a ripple that drew its attention away from both the zebra and themselves. The crocodile turned, revealing the vulnerability of its underbelly. "Grace, now!" Jake urged with an urgency that fired the last remnants of doubt. Summoning her courage, Grace motioned to the zebra, whose once dilapidated expression now fluttered with hidden resilience. "We're here to help you," she murmured almost to herself. Every parallel to her life's struggles rose to the surface. Could she be this zebra? Could she turn from prey into protector? As the crocodile swiveled, Grace sprinted forward, zigzagging to dodge its massive tail. She planted her feet beside the trembling zebra, making herself a barrier. The weight of the creature's gaze sank deep into her consciousness, each flicker of its large eyes reflecting not just fear, but desperation. "Hold steady," she whispered, a mantra for both herself and the animal. "We're getting you out." With Jake's eyes fixated on her, she felt their bond solidifying. He was not just a teammate, he was her ally, her steadfast partner, sharing a trust forged in danger. It emboldened her to lean into her innate leadership, stirring remnants of her spirit she had buried beneath layers of self-doubt. The thundering pulse of her heart matched her rapid thoughts, a swirling dance of strategies, risks, and the growing weight of responsibility. Grabbing Jake's shoulder, she leaned in. "We lure the croc again. Keep its focus while I assist the zebra." "On three," he nodded, their synchronization building once more. "All right, 1, 2. As they moved, a new clarity emerged within Grace. She wasn't merely guiding her team, she was weaving an intricate balance of courage, solidarity, and instinct. She understood now that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was part of their strength. As the crocodile lunged again, distracted by the distant splash of another stone, Grace reached out to the zebra, sensing the intertwining fates of both their lives. She noted the shivering in its legs, the wild glint of fear, juxtaposed with a flicker of hope. They were both fighting for survival, against foes more significant than themselves. Just then, the primal instincts of the zebra took over. It nudged against Grace, and for a fleeting moment, their spirits intertwined, the zebra realizing it wasn't alone in this fight. But as they prepared to make their escape, a sudden scream erupted from the north border. It was Lucy's voice, a frantic call that sliced through the thick atmosphere. The lightness of their decisions began to darken. "Grace, we need backup!" The urgency jolted through her like an electric current. In an instant, the reality of their mission reasserted itself. The stakes were not merely the zebra, but their entire team. With the crocodile still thrashing, Grace's heart raced against her ribs. Could she harness the courage from both the zebra and her team to face this new threat? The path ahead was unfurling into a treacherous abyss. The moment of truth was edging closer, her choice reverberating into the shadows of what lay beyond. Would she step into the unknown to protect them all, or would the weight of fear pull her back into despair? Grace's mind raced as she processed Lucy's frantic call. There was no room for hesitation. The time for deliberation had passed. She was being thrust into a position she had once feared. Leadership was not just about issuing commands. It was embracing vulnerability while making tough decisions, often under life-threatening pressure. "Jake, follow me!" she barked, the sound firm and clear through the encroaching chaos. They had to regroup with Lucy and Roger, but the path wasn't straightforward. Her psychological instinct kicked in, a fight-or-flight mantra pulsing through her like a war drum. She tapped into her reservoir of resolve, blocking out the swirling doubts that clawed at her after every misstep in prior missions. Instead of succumbing to panic, she embraced the adrenaline. Every challenge she'd faced prepared her for this moment. Grace propelled herself forward, focused on their goal. With Jake at her side, they maneuvered past fallen branches and thick underbrush, the trajectory of their determination leading the way. The screeching of Lucy's voice echoed in her ears. 4, 5, 10 feet ahead! Grace steered Jake off the main path, zigzagging toward the sound. Tension hummed in the air like a taut wire, each rustle of leaves conjuring images of lurking dangers. Yet, with every step, Grace tapped deeper into her willpower, unearthing a powerful realization. The strength she had always sought was intertwined with the team she led. Their bond fortified her resolve, so she resolved to fight for each crewmate. Breaching the cover of the trees, their eyes locked onto the unfolding chaos. Lucy stood defiant but cornered, shielding Roger, whose ankle was pinned beneath a 200-pound rock. The underlying threat remained. Those primal screams weren't for nothing. The crocodile evidently lingered close, lurking like a dark shadow against the afternoon sun. Grace's heart hammered, the vision of her team's safety igniting a fiercer ferocity within her. "Stay calm, Lucy. I'm coming," Grace shouted, her voice slicing through the cacophony. Every stride toward the unfolding chaos felt like a confirmation. This was not merely a mission, it was an embodiment of who she was becoming, a leader willing to safeguard others at all costs. "Jake, keep the crocodile busy," she instructed, her ideas synapsing into strategies concocted from raw instinct. He nodded and understood trust passing between them, but his eyes echoed the concern they both felt, a balance of fear and purpose. In the grip of urgency, Grace knelt next to Roger. "I need you to breathe, Roger. We're getting you out," she said, focusing on his face, the fear etched in his brow spurring her own determination. If she could convey that strength through her words, perhaps he would anchor himself in that fleeting moment. As Jake distracted the crocodile by hurling stones and shouting, Grace worked to lift the heavy rock. The intensity of the moment ignited a deep connection within her. This wasn't merely about survival. Grace realized the full weight of her actions could forge a resilient path for them all. With a sudden surge of determination, she gripped the rock, drawing on every ounce of muscle she possessed. It shifted, inching free from Roger's foot. "Almost there," she yelled, the words liberating the tension building inside her. In a frantic heave, the rock released its hold, sliding aside. Grace was met with the wide-eyed gratitude of Roger, and she felt powerful barriers shatter with that affirmation. "Now we go," she commanded, adrenaline sustaining her urgency. Yet, shadows flickered across the periphery. Was it simply fear manifesting, or was the crocodile re-establishing its focus? With Roger leaning against her for support, their escape unflowed fluidly. Their hearts synced in rhythm, living testament to newfound trust forged in the fires of crisis. But as they made the final dash toward safety, Grace glanced back and found the beast rising from the shadows. The startling roar shattered the air, and Grace knew, just then, the fight was far from over. The moment was upon them, the confrontation inevitable. The realization settled thickly in her chest. Would she have the fortitude to stand her ground and shield those she cared for, or would the weight of fear constrict her once more as they faced the great beast together? A new challenge loomed, laced with inevitability, testing her resolve more than ever. Would she emerge victorious, or would the instinct to flee overpower the roar of her heart? The roar of the crocodile reverberated in Grace's ears, and for a fleeting second, time froze. Every instinct within her screamed to run, Yet she stood, anchored by an unfamiliar strength coursing through her veins. The reality of the situation crystallized into absolute clarity. This was not merely a threat to Roger, but an existential challenge that would define who she was becoming as a leader. "Jake, keep moving!" Grace shouted. There was no time for hesitation. She felt the weight of responsibility shift onto her shoulders, igniting a fierce desire to protect those under her command. The adrenaline surged, sharpening her focus. She had to think strategically. Impulsive actions could spell disaster. As Jake and Roger scrambled towards the nearest cover, Grace positioned herself defiantly between her teammates and the charging beast. The size and ferocity of the crocodile were terrifying, but the thought of the bond she had formed with her team fueled her courage. She would not let fear dictate her actions, not today. The crocodile lunged, snapping its massive jaws just inches away from her. Grace barely edged aside, the acrid stench of the creature's breath hitting her like a physical blow. Heart racing, she scanned for anything that could be used to distract it. "Lucy, where are you?" she called, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the terror looming in front of her. The sound of her own name pulled Lucy from her stunned silence. "I can't leave him!" Lucy shouted, her eyes darting between Roger and Grace. In that moment, Grace was reminded that leadership often meant empowering others. "Together, we can do this," Grace replied, her voice carrying over the creature's menacing growl. She locked eyes with Lucy, willing her to act. In this crisis, their shared vulnerability could motivate them. With a burst of determination, Lucy grabbed a nearby branch, a weapon that could redirect the crocodile's focus. "On the count of 3, we draw its attention," Grace instructed, glancing back to where Roger still leaned heavily, his breath shallow. She needed to know that he could get to safety. 1, 2, 3. Jake hurled a rock toward the beast, and in that moment of diversion, Lucy jabbed the branch upward. The crocodile snapped at the distraction, its attention shifted temporarily away from them. "Now, move!" Grace yelled as she rushed towards Roger, feeling the surge of adrenaline ignite her resolve. They couldn't waste a second. Together, they hoisted Roger up, urgency propelling them forward, as Grace's mind whirled with realization. Leadership demanded not just strength, but also the capacity to cultivate collaboration and trust. Each member of her team had unique abilities, and it was unity that could triumph over this formidable adversary. As they darted toward a narrow gap between the trees, Grace felt Roger's weight against her, a reminder of the stakes they faced. The shared burden of survival. Her fear morphed into fierce determination, igniting every fiber of her being. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the crocodile turned back, bellowing. It was escalating, becoming more furious. 2 steps forward, and they would be on the edge of safety. "Keep going, I'll hold it back," Grace declared, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. She rushed toward the animal, the impulse to protect rising instinctively. This was a gamble, an act of desperation and bravery, yet she couldn't ignore the inkling that this was the test she had unconsciously prepared for, to finally embrace her role as a leader. As she faced the beast, it locked its fierce gaze onto her. Every heartbeat resounded in her chest, building a palpable anticipation. Would the outcome affirm her evolution, or would she falter in the face of danger? The final moments loomed, suspense crackling in the air. Could she channel the surge of fear into an unbreakable resolve? Grace's next move held the potential to redefine her narrative. Would she find the strength to confront the beast, or allow the instinct to overshadow her newfound courage? The confrontation awaited, and the stakes had never been higher. Grace stood rooted in the wild chaos, the crocodile's hot breath bathing her in fear and adrenaline. Each roar resonated through her body, a physical reminder of both her decision and the monumental task ahead. This was not just a physical confrontation. It was a moment of existential reckoning, a litmus test of her evolving leadership. The beast turned its massive head, its predatory gaze zeroing in on her. Hunger and instinct fighting for dominance. Panic threatened to engulf her. Yet amidst the pulsating chaos, an unexpected clarity began to form. The fire of determination she felt was not born solely from fear for her life, but from a profound sense of responsibility for those behind her. Leadership was about sacrifice, and today she would demonstrate what she was willing to risk. As the crocodile's jaws snapped dangerously close, Grace took a steadying breath. She was not just a participant in this life-or-death struggle. She was the orchestrator, the strategist. Her thoughts flickered to Roger and the skills each team member brought. Unity was key. With that conviction, a plan began to take shape. Lucy, keep the branch up. Jake, look for anything else we can use to create noise, Grace shouted, finding her voice amid a storm of chaos. She could not merely hold the creature's attention. She needed to exploit its instincts. Lucy, now emboldened, thrust the branch high, instigating a series of loud cracks that echoed through the air. The crocodile recoiled at the sudden movement, its instincts triggering a pause just enough for Grace's calculated strategy to unfold. Grace was acutely aware of the weight of each moment. Could she really drive this creature away? The resolve deep inside her wrestled against doubt. She realized leadership required more than just bravery.
It demanded a willingness to confront the unknown, to display vulnerability in the face of terror and extract strength from her companions. "Now!" she yelled, raising her hands in a desperate attempt to distract the creature, embodying the role of a defensive barrier. As if choreographed, Lucy flailed the branch, and Jake sent another rock flying to the opposite side. The cacophony washed over Grace, a symphony born of instinct and trust. The crocodile diverted its focus, which granted Grace the precious seconds needed to execute her idea. "We can flank it from both sides. It's less likely to attack if we're unpredictable," she called out, adrenaline fueling her mental acuity. They began to move, orchestrating a coordinated maneuver that required absolute trust. Grace inhaled deeply, challenging the instinct to retreat, channeling her fear into raw energy as they pulled their focus from the immediate threat to their collective goal. As her heart raced and her feet pounded against the ground, she felt the thrill of this newfound clarity. Each step illuminated her transformation. She was no longer just a reluctant leader. She was a catalyst, a linchpin for her team's survival. The goal was now in sight, safety. But as they danced around the crocodile's fury, reciprocating movement with purpose, Grace felt the blossoming connection between her and the team. The brush with death ignited her sense of community with them, reminding her that true leadership fosters bonds beyond survival. It thrived on collaboration and trust. Yet the tussle with the beast was not upon them alone. Echoes of uncertainty lurked within her mind, the dissonance between her heart's fierce determination and the shadows of doubt that occasionally whispered hesitation. The crocodile's furious thrashing rendered her senses acute, and as they maneuvered further down the narrow gap, Grace felt a stirring within her. The connection between each heartbeat and her resolve emphasized a possibility. A leader who could inspire, not just by courage, but by empathy and authentic partnership. With safety nearing, she took another glance back at the creature. This was not merely a battle with a predator. It was the unveiling of her inner warrior, fiercely protective of her team. Just as they reached the edge of the danger zone, a sudden guttural snarl filled the air, a conscious reminder that the battle was not yet won. The crocodile lunged toward them again, and in a heartbeat, every ounce of effort hinged on their final decision. Would Grace's newfound understanding of leadership endure, or would the danger unravel them all? The moment teetered on the cusp of resolution, waiting for their next move. As the crocodile lunged, time seemed to stretch, the moment crystallizing with a sharp clarity that sliced through the chaos. Grace's instincts shot into overdrive, and her mind raced. They had to act now, before panic could enslave their resolve. "Flank left," she shouted, her voice cutting through the thrumming worry. I sensed Lucy's hesitation, but pressed on, heart thumping like a war drum. "Trust me, we can. Do this!" The urgency in Grace's tone seemed to awaken Lucy's resolve. The two women shifted to the left, their bodies moving in synchrony, quickening their pace as they circled the crocodile. Jake followed close, his eyes wide with adrenaline, ready to respond. Fear began to ebb into adrenaline-fueled determination. Grace could feel their collective heartbeat, a rhythm that echoed the throbbing intensity of their circumstances. Each rush of air filled her with an understanding that this was more than a strategic maneuver. It was an evolution of trust among them. But Grace's thoughts turned inward. Could she maintain this leadership? Was she truly equipped to inspire within such peril? These questions loomed large, yet she found an answer in their unity. As they synchronized their movements, the line between leader and team blurred. They were becoming an organism, a single unit breathing in harmony. Then it hit her. The necessary dimension of their leadership was not merely about directing action, but about sharing vulnerability. They were emerging from the shadow of their fears together, a revelation she had once thought impossible. Just as she urged the group forward, her heart swelled with an undeniable sense of belonging and solidarity. "Keep the noise going," Grace commanded, spotting a rock the size of her fist. She scooped it up and hurled it with all her strength toward the crocodile's snout. It landed with a loud thud, capturing the creature's attention again. The brief distraction gave them precious moments to reposition. "What's next?" Jake asked, voice laced with both desperation and determination. Grace scanned the environment, adrenaline flooding her senses. "We need to draw it further away from the water. Lucy, if you can get that stick in its mouth, we might be able to pull it. Make it think we're stronger." Lucy nodded, her determination crystallizing as she aimed the branch with precision. The crocodile, now responding to their flanking, snapped its jaws and swung its massive head toward Lucy. "Now!" Grace yelled, her voice a rallying cry. In that moment, she felt the echo of each team member's heartbeat, a testament that their lives and ultimately their leadership depended on this collaboration. With each calculated maneuver, Grace learned to embrace both fear and uncertainty. She felt the sweet taste of purpose as they fought for survival, not just against the crocodile, but against their own limitations. The crocodile thrashed violently, skin glistening under the sun, its raw power a stark reminder of the stakes. Sweat trickled down Grace's brow, her body throbbing with exertion as they ramped up their efforts. Yet within the tempest of adrenaline, a quiet confidence began to emerge. What if they not only survived this encounter, but emerged transformed? Each of them, including Grace. The primal dance with danger was no longer simply about self-preservation. It now held an opportunity to redefine their understanding of leadership, of each other, and of themselves. Just as they began to believe they could redirect the beast, a sudden surge of energy from the crocodile sent Lucy stumbling back, her branch slipping through her fingers. The predator seemed undeterred, reconvening its focus on Grace, who suddenly stood alone, heart hammering in her chest. Had she underestimated the creature? Was her bond with her team enough to withstand this strike? Would her burgeoning leadership crumble now when they needed it most? The tension snapped tighter as the beast readied for another charge. It was a moment pregnant with possibility, a chance to either affirm her growth or watch it shatter. As Grace caught her breath, she stood resolute, confronting the beast, her team just behind her, the outcome uncertain, but the stakes higher than ever. What would she do in the face of this new challenge? And how would this experience irrevocably alter her journey as a leader? Grace stood at the epicenter of chaos, an electric charge surging through her veins as the crocodile's attention locked onto her. Time slowed again, the weight of responsibility crashing down, pressing her spirit beneath an avalanche of doubt and determination. She was acutely aware of the stakes, not just for herself, but for her companions, who were counting on her to guide them through this storm. "Focus, just like we practiced," Grace shouted, her voice sharper now, cutting through the fray. She turned to Jake and Lucy, who were regaining their footing, eyes flickering with a blend of fear and resolve. They were a triad, each one a gear in the complex machinery of survival, and any mishap could be catastrophic. As Grace moved into a defensive stance, adrenaline honed her senses. She scrutinized the crocodile, observing its breathing patterns, every twitch of its immense body. This was no mere reptile. This was a living embodiment of primal instinct. It was a creature forged by millions of years of evolution, capable, ruthless, and relentless. Had she truly prepared for this? She felt the heaviness of her own limitations bear down on her. Questions plagued her. What if her strategy faltered? What if her newfound confidence had been a flimsy facade? But deep within this turmoil resided a flicker of defiance. She wouldn't back down. She would transform fear into action. The crocodile surged forward, its massive jaws snapping shut just inches from Grace. For an indescribable moment, her world narrowed to that singular act, a clash of wills. As she sidestepped, she felt an awakening. This was not just a battle with a beast. It was a confrontation with every doubt she had harbored about her ability to lead. That realization installed an urgency within her, a hunger to defy her own expectations. "Lucy, distract it. Jake, flank it from the right." Grace barked while positioning herself between the predator and her compatriots, intentional in her defensive maneuver. Lucy grabbed a handful of dirt and flung it into the crocodile's eyes, momentarily blinding it. Jake took advantage, rushing in from the side and banging a makeshift weapon against a rock. "Keep its focus off the water," Grace yelled, adrenaline heightening her voice, casting aside everything but the immediate goal. This was a test of teamwork, an opportunity to not only lead, but to embrace mutual vulnerability, a lesson they were learning in real time. The crocodile, shaken momentarily but still relentless, swung its tail, sending Jake sprawling to the ground. Panic flared, but Grace's heart steadied. Their dynamic was evolving under pressure. Shoulders squared, she felt a profound sense of responsibility for each of them. She needed to be their anchor. Grace glanced at the surroundings, eyes darting to the lush foliage just beyond their immediate battleground. There had to be a way to use the environment, a distraction, potential to steer this encounter to their advantage. Then it hit her. The narrow gap that separated them from the bank would allow a clearer path for escape if they could lure the crocodile further inland. "Follow my lead," she shouted, reverberating confidence that ignited a new flame within them. They surged back together, Grace at the forefront, calling on the spirit of unity they had forged. As adrenaline and instinct fueled their movements, a clear synergy emerged. They were not just individuals in a life-or-death situation. They were a cohesive force, embodying the lesson Grace had been learning. True leadership lies in collaboration and embracing collective strength even amid despair. Their strategy unfolded, but the crocodile's menacing growls reminded them of their precarious reality. Grace could still feel her heart racing, her breath heavy, her resolve tempered in real time. The next moment felt crucial, a culmination of resolve looming close. It was a battle of wills, wherein every decision could either fortify her growth or unravel it completely. As Grace tightened her grip on her makeshift weapon, she knew a choice lay ahead that could irrevocably redefine her purpose. It was time to confront not just the crocodile, but the parts of herself still clinging to self-doubt. With determination surging, she prepared for the next move, feeling the gut instinct of leadership crystallize into clarity. What would she reveal about herself in this crucible, and how would that shift the fate of her team? Suddenly, a rustling from behind drew her attention. What now? Uncertainty crashed against her renewed resolve, reminding her that this confrontation was only just beginning. With adrenaline surging through her veins, Grace stood firm, her heart racing against the backdrop of chaos and uncertainty. The crocodile's furious growls echoed, but they no longer instilled fear. Instead, they catalyzed an extraordinary metamorphosis within her. This confrontation was no longer merely survival. It was a testament to the strength she had cultivated in herself and her team. "Push forward," she commanded, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife. "We have to lure it back toward the trees." In a synchronized effort, Grace and her team sprang into action. Jake flanked to the right, while Lucy prepared her makeshift weapon of distraction. Grace felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. Every fiber of her being was ignited, solidifying her role not just as a leader, but a cornerstone of resilience. The crocodile lunged once again, but Grace didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into the knowledge she had accumulated over the years, an understanding that it was not just cunning or brute strength that could turn the tide. It was collaboration, strategy, and resolve. As they executed the new plan, Grace felt the unity of her team fortify her instincts. When they successfully drew the crocodile inland, it became apparent that this was not just an escape. It was the culmination of their individual transformations. Each second pulled them away from being fearful individuals and drew them closer to an empowered entity. "Keep moving," Grace urged, her voice steady. She darted ahead, framing their escape route while glancing back to ensure her team remained in sync. She locked eyes with Lucy, who was still fending off the beast, and sent a silent promise of solidarity her way. Together, they would overcome. Lucy returned the glance with unwavering determination. The ground trembled beneath them, but they pressed on, navigating closer to the trees that marked their safety. Grace's mind whirled. She could feel how far they had come, not just with the mission, but with each other. They had faced their fears, emerging stronger together, and this moment was an embodiment of their resilience. As they reached the tree line, the crocodile hesitated at the edge of the water, seemingly evaluating its next move. Grace seized the opportunity and rallied her team, shaking off every ounce of doubt that had once clouded her mind. "We've made it this far. Now let's finish this together." With a collective roar of determination, Grace led her team in a final show of strength. They hurled stones and branches into the water, generating splashes that created a dramatic distraction, pulling the crocodile's attention just long enough for Grace to devise one last strategy. "Jake, Lucy, move to flank it again. We'll redirect it towards the trap we set earlier," she instructed, no longer rattled by doubt, but propelled by conviction. This was their moment, a chance not only to save the zebra, but to reclaim their confidence and celebrate their growth as a unified team. In those pivotal seconds, as they executed their plan, Grace understood something profound. True leadership was not solely about standing at the front. It was about embodying trust, fostering collaboration, and embracing the full spectrum of vulnerability. In accepting her weaknesses, she had transformed her understanding of strength. As the crocodile veered off towards the trap they had cleverly arranged earlier, thanks to Roger, the moment suspended in time became an indelible memory etched on her heart. They had done it. Every fear, every last shred of doubt had been stripped away in the flames of their united resolve. Finally, with the crocodile momentarily distracted, Grace turned her focus back to the zebra, who had been the innocuous catalyst in this entire journey. Together, they approached the now safeguarded creature, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed to understand that it, too, not alone in its struggles. There it stood, a symbol of their tenacity, their grit, and their undeniable connection. As they wrapped up the rescue, Grace felt the burden of her past slip away. Embracing her vulnerabilities had revealed a leader within her she never truly recognized. She could do this because she wasn't alone. Each connection strengthened their collective journey, allowing her to achieve true fulfillment not merely from saving a zebra, but rediscovering herself in the process. With a profound sense of pride swelling in her chest, Grace looked at Noah, who had joined them at the rescue's conclusion, eyes wide and filled with admiration. "Look what we did," she smiled, a voice imbued with solid confidence. In that moment, overcoming obstacles and achieving individual growth came full circle.
This journey had transformed them all, leading Grace into not just a new chapter of her life as a wildlife rescuer, but of a renewed purpose as a nurturer, a visionary, and an indomitable force for positive change. This was her moment of accomplishment. She had emerged victorious, not only in rescuing the zebra, but in conquering her fears and realizing the leader she was destined to be. So now, take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show you care. Comment with your reactions and theories about the ending. What did you learn from Grace's journey? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Real fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.